Before the cathedrals, before the palaces, before the plazas, Madrid, Spain's proud capital, was once home to something unexpected, something erased. A grand mosque, a place of worship, learning, and light, now hidden beneath the surface of history. This is the story they don't teach you in textbooks. Welcome to the Forgotten Mosque of Madrid. Part 1. When Madrid was Muslim. Most people think of Madrid today as a European capital full of cathedrals, castles, and cafes. But what if I told you that before all that, Madrid was once a small Islamic city? Yes, Spain's capital was once Muslim, and it had a name, Mayrit. Let's go back to the 9th century, over 1,100 years ago. At that time, much of Spain was ruled by Muslims in a region known as Al-Andalus. This was a golden age of science, culture, and tolerance, and cities like Córdoba, Granada, and Seville became world-famous centers of learning. But Mayrit, it started as a small military settlement. In the year 852 CE, the Umayyad Emir Muhammad I of Córdoba ordered a fortress to be built near a stream in the center of the Iberian Peninsula. This fortress would help defend against attacks from Christian kingdoms in the north. The Arabic name Mayrit came from the word Myra, meaning water channels or abundant water, because of the many underground streams flowing beneath the land. As more people came to live near the fortress, Mayrit slowly grew into a tiny Islamic town. It had homes, markets, walls for protection, and most importantly, a mosque. That mosque was the first Friday mosque of Madrid, the central place where Muslims gathered every week for Jumu'ah, Friday prayers. This mosque wasn't just a place for worship. Like in most Muslim cities, it was also a community center, a place for education, and a symbol of unity. Men of knowledge, ulama, merchants, soldiers, and everyday people came here to pray and discuss life. In these early days, Islam shaped daily life in Mayrit. People followed Islamic law, spoke Arabic, and lived in peace under Muslim rule. The people of Mayrit weren't just Arab Muslims. Many were Berbers from North Africa, or local Iberians who had embraced Islam. There was a mix of cultures, but one shared faith. And though Mayrit was small compared to cities like Toledo or Córdoba, it had a strategic location, close to the mountains and rivers, making it valuable for future kings and empires. For over 200 years, Madrid remained a quiet Islamic town, protected by its walls, centered around its mosque, and part of the wider civilization of Al-Andalus. But this wouldn't last forever. In 1085, Christian forces would arrive, and with them, the story of Mayrit's mosque would take a very different turn. Part 2. The Lost Mosque of Madrid. In the heart of Old Madrid, beneath the stones of a cathedral, once stood a mosque. Not just any mosque. It was the first Friday mosque of Mayrit, the city we now call Madrid. A place where the city's early Muslims prayed, gathered, and lived their faith in peace. Let's imagine it for a moment. The year is around 865 CE. The newly growing Muslim town of Mayrit had just begun to flourish. And right beside the city's defensive walls, near where the royal palace and Almudena Cathedral now stand, rose a mosque made from stone, mud brick, and wood. The structure was simple yet elegant. It had a large rectangular prayer hall, divided by rows of columns. At the front of the hall was a mihrab, a small, beautifully carved niche that showed the direction of Mecca. Next to the mosque stood a minaret, a tower from which the muezzin would call out the adhan, the call to prayer 5 times a day. Can you hear it? Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. The call would echo over the hills of central Spain, reminding the faithful to pause, reflect, and connect with their Creator. But this mosque wasn't just about prayer. Like many mosques of the time, it was a center for learning, discussion, and community. Scholars taught young boys the Quran. Travelers stopped to rest and listen to sermons. Leaders gathered to decide important matters of the town. This was a living, breathing heart of Mayrit. For nearly 200 years, this mosque stood as a symbol of Islamic presence in central Spain. But then came the year 1085, a turning point. The Christian king Alfonso VI of Castile led his army into Mayrit and conquered the town as part of the Reconquista, a centuries-long campaign to retake Spain from Muslim rule. Yet, interestingly, he did not destroy the mosque. Instead, like many other rulers of the time, Alfonso converted it into a church. This was a common practice. Muslims would be expelled or forced to convert, and their mosques would be turned into Christian churches. The minaret became a bell tower. The mihrab was covered or destroyed. Crosses were raised where once verses of the Quran had been recited. Over the centuries, this mosque-turned-church underwent many transformations. And in the late 1400s or early 1500s, the decision was made to completely demolish the old building. In its place, Christian rulers built a new, majestic cathedral, what we now know as the Almudena Cathedral. The stones of the mosque? Gone. Its layout? Forgotten. Its history? Buried beneath the foundations of a new religious empire. Today, when you walk through Madrid's old city, you might see grand architecture, Catholic symbols, and royal monuments, but beneath all of it lies the memory of a mosque, erased from sight, but not from history. And if you listen closely, you might still hear echoes of a forgotten prayer, from a time when Madrid was Mayrit, and the call to prayer rang proudly in the air. Part 3. The Fall and the Cross. For nearly 200 years, the people of Mayrit lived under the call to prayer. The mosque stood tall, not just as a building, but as a symbol of faith, knowledge, and identity. But in 1085 CE, that chapter came to an end. That year, the powerful Christian king Alfonso VI of Castile marched south in his campaign to reclaim lands once ruled by Muslims. His armies swept across the region, and soon Mayrit, the small but strategic Muslim town, found itself surrounded. Unlike larger cities like Toledo or Seville, Mayrit didn't have the manpower to resist for long. The Muslim leaders of the town, hoping to avoid bloodshed, surrendered peacefully. And just like that, the flag of Al-Andalus was lowered. The cross replaced the crescent. Madrid was no longer Mayrit. But what happened to the mosque? Alfonso VI, like many Christian rulers during the Reconquista, followed a familiar pattern. Instead of destroying mosques, he converted them into churches. It was a symbolic act, a way of saying, "Your faith has fallen. Ours now stands above." So the Friday Mosque of Mayrit, the heart of the town's Islamic identity, was taken over. The adhan no longer echoed from the minaret. The mihrab, once facing Mecca, was covered or torn down. The minbar, the pulpit for sermons, was removed, and a Christian altar was placed where Muslims once bowed in prayer. The mosque was now a church dedicated to the Virgin Mary. The town's name was changed. Mayrit became Madrid. Arabic began to fade, replaced by Latin and early Spanish. But it didn't happen overnight. For a short time after the conquest, Muslims were allowed to remain in the city under strict conditions. They became a protected minority called mujars and could practice Islam quietly. But over the years, things changed. New laws, forced conversions, and social pressure made life harder. Eventually, Muslims were pushed out, and the mosque-turned-church was rebuilt multiple times. By the 15th century, the original structure was gone. In its place, the powerful Catholic rulers, the kings and queens of Spain, began constructing something grand, a new cathedral that would shine as a symbol of Christian dominance in the capital. That cathedral is now known as the Almudena Cathedral. Ironically, the name Almudena itself comes from the Arabic word Almudena, meaning the citadel, a small fortress. Even in trying to erase the past, fragments of Islam remained. The fall of the mosque wasn't just the loss of a building. It marked the end of Muslim identity in Madrid, an entire way of life erased, a city's roots hidden beneath stone. But memory is a powerful thing. Even though the mosque is gone, even though no walls remain, the story still survives. Passed through whispers, books, and now your voice. Part 4. What remains today? Today, if you walk through the vibrant streets of Madrid, it's hard to imagine that this city was once Muslim. Grand boulevards, elegant palaces, the towering Almudena Cathedral, standing right beside the royal palace. It all feels so deeply Christian, so European, so distant from the Islamic world. But look closer. Beneath the surface, echoes remain. Let's start with the very spot where the old Friday Mosque of Mayrit once stood. After the fall of the city in 1085, the mosque was turned into a church. Centuries later, that church was replaced by the Almudena Cathedral, whose construction began in the late 19th century and wasn't completed until 1993. Most people visiting the cathedral today have no idea what lies underneath. But in 1999, during a renovation and archaeological excavation, something incredible was discovered. Buried beneath the crypt of the cathedral were ancient foundations and walls, built in the style of early Islamic architecture. Some scholars believe these may be the last physical remains of the original Mosque of Mayrit. Nothing grand or fully preserved, just scattered stones, walls, and floor patterns. But still, these are traces of a forgotten faith that once shaped this land. Even the cathedral's name holds a clue to the past. Almudena comes from the Arabic word Almudena, meaning the little citadel. The Christians who took over the city kept the Arabic name of the fortress area, showing how deeply Islamic language and culture had influenced the region. And it doesn't stop there. If you look at street names in Madrid's oldest neighborhoods, you'll find signs of its Islamic past. Words like Cuesta de la Vega, near the cathedral, mark the ancient routes that once led to Muslim fortifications. Even the city's layout, especially in the older quarters, still reflects the Islamic urban planning style: narrow, winding alleys designed to provide shade and privacy, much like in other cities of Al-Andalus. And remember the name Madrid itself? Some believe it comes from the Arabic Madrid, or Mayrit, rooted in Myra, meaning source of water. A fitting name, since early Muslims built the city around a series of underground water channels called qanats, an engineering technique brought from Persia and perfected in the Islamic world. So yes, the mosque may be gone, its walls demolished, its minaret silent, its memory erased from tourist brochures and history textbooks. But in the cracks of the stones, in the names of places, in the buried layers beneath Madrid's modern beauty, Islam still whispers. Historians, archaeologists, and truth seekers are slowly unearthing this buried past. Piece by piece, the story of Muslim Madrid is being reclaimed, not with anger, but with respect, curiosity, and a desire for historical truth. Because history isn't just about what we see, it's also about what was made invisible. And now we can finally say, Madrid did have a mosque, stood proudly, served faithfully, and though lost, it is not forgotten. Part 5: Why it matters. So why does this story matter? Why should we care about a forgotten mosque, buried under a cathedral, in a European city that doesn't even look Muslim anymore? Because history is more than dates and monuments. It's about identity, memory, and truth. For centuries, the history of Islam in Europe has been silenced, ignored, or worse, deliberately erased. When people think of Islam, they don't usually think of Spain, or Italy, or the heart of Europe. But the truth is, Islam was here, thrived here, and it shaped cities, sciences, languages, and cultures in ways most of the world has forgotten. Madrid, the capital of Spain, was once Mayrit, a Muslim town, where the adhan echoed through the valleys, and a mosque stood proudly at its center. And even after the fall, even after the cross replaced the crescent, the traces never truly disappeared. Why it matters is because stories like this rebuild the truth. They remind us that Muslims didn't only arrive in Europe as refugees or immigrants. They were already here. They were builders, poets, scientists, and citizens. Their blood, their bricks, and their beliefs are part of Europe's foundation. This lost mosque is a symbol, not just of what was destroyed, but of what can be reclaimed in memory, in spirit, in truth. It tells us that history is not always what we're told. It's also what was left out. And that matters, especially today, because when people forget the past, they become more vulnerable to division in the present. They think we've always been separate, when in reality, we've been connected for over 1,000 years. When we uncover these hidden stories, we don't just honor the Muslims who once lived in Mayrit. We also open the door for a more honest, inclusive history, one where everyone sees themselves. A mosque in Madrid might seem like a small detail, but it's a thread in a much bigger tapestry. a tapestry of forgotten libraries, vanished universities, erased architecture, buried brilliance, and each time we uncover one of these threads, we pull the past back into the light, not for nostalgia, but for knowledge, for dignity, for truth. So yes, this story matters. It matters for Muslims who deserve to know the richness of their legacy. It matters for Europeans who deserve to know the full story of their lands. And it matters for everyone, everywhere, who believes that truth should never be buried. The Mosque of Madrid may no longer stand, but now that you know its story, it lives again. If this story moved you, if you believe forgotten Islamic history deserves a voice, like, share, comment, and most importantly, never stop seeking the truth. Because history isn't just what's remembered, it's also what's been intentionally forgotten.